Welcome back. Last time we made the whole plotline. Now we have enough iridium for both the HSSS coils and IV energy hatches. We still miss some indium, but we can easily get it by dissolving a lot of minerals in sulfuric acid and then destroying all of our aluminium to extract indium from that slurry. This simple but expensive process can be made by just 2 multiblocks. And once we get all the required ingredients, we can start producing indium slurry, which will self-feed back into the chemical reactor to extract the indium. And with that, we can finally have the IV energy hatches. And with that we can now melt our canite, and thus craft the large processing factory. This machine has 3 working modes, and we are going to make one multi-block for each working mode. The first one we will want is one in miscellaneous mode to use as a laser engraver. It can do its job even outside of a clean room, and to upgrade it we only have to swap the energy hatches. The next one we want will still be in miscellaneous mode. But, this time, by changing the circuits it will work in autoclave and fluid solidifier mode. Wall shared we have the next one, in metal mode, which will do as a lathe, compressor and magnetic polarizer. Next we shall have one machine dedicated to solidifying fluids. This will use some special, and expensive, input hatches to not mix up the molds. Now that we can easily work fluids, we can work on the next upgrade, volcanoes. However, we still miss 2 ingredients, yttrium and ZPM circuits. To get the yttrium, we can process rare earth in a chemical bath with some acids and then dehydrate it. This will also yield a lot of other stuff too. Meanwhile, the only option we can use for the ZPM circuit is the quantum processor mainframe. Thus, we quickly make all the patterns to craft these circuits. And with that, we can now craft our first volcano. And, while we wait for it to be crafted, we can go farm some withers. And once the crafting is done, we can promote our EBFs to volcanoes. Those have many bonuses that EBFs don't, and the only downside is that they eat some blazing pyrotum. We could passively craft it, but to have a better look on the amount, we shall have a level maintainer to autocraft it. This level maintainer will keep issuing crafting orders to ensure we always have some stocked up. And we shall also stock up some other of the most commonly used materials. The main advantage of the volcanoes is that they can do parallel smelting. However, some materials such as iridium require a lot of power, thus making us unable to make more than one at a time. But we are still using 2 EV energy hatches. So, time to upgrade to 2 IV ones. And we are going to need 2 for each of the 4 volcanoes. But that totals to a potential consumption of 16 IV amps. Which is the whole power that our current base can handle. And since we will also want to run the other machines we have, it is time to move to a multi-block battery to manage our main power node. We are doing a Lipotronic supercapacitor with 9 IV capacitors. Once we crafted all the parts, we can assemble it in a corner of our main building. And then we will find out that this thing has no power sockets. So we quickly craft some 16 amps IV ones. And also we will need some input plugs. Once everything is done, we can finish the assembly and rewire our main power cables to the new battery. Since we can't easily see how much power is flowing, we shall use a GTNH sensor kit and an industrial information panel to have a clear view of how our power is doing from the main hall of our base. And it was then that we realized that being able to manage more than 16 amps of current was not enough. We also have to produce such amounts of power. And the best way to do so is probably by using the charge we have left to craft a bunch of nuclear reactors. This time we are going to use a fluid setup, in a dedicated building. As you can already see from this quick overview, this system is going to be slightly more complex than the ones we have seen so far. The two tanks on top are for the coolant which is heated up by the reactors. The third tank is for the distilled water, and it has a sensor to shut off the heat exchangers if it runs low. We collect all the steam from the 4 machines in a single giant hatch, where we move it using the only pipe with enough capacity, AE2 peer-to-peer. And we move it to a couple of turbines, which we will be running in loose mode. After turning it on, this system will require some time to reach peak efficiency, and also to speed up the turbines. Now, those turbines can handle at maximum 32,700 EU per tick before blowing up. So we must be careful at how much steam we run through them. Using a regulator, we can precisely fine-tune how much the flow shall be. And once we finished fine-tuning the turbines, we realize we have some leftover steam. Since that would mean losing water from the loop, we will also want to fine-tune how much coolant is moved through the heat exchangers. Once again, instead of using a spreadsheet and some math, we slowly fine-tune the values by trial and error because that's more fun. And we do that until we find the point where the production and consumption are perfectly balanced and the system stabilizes. Now we can go back and see that our batteries are charging up quite fast. Since we can't easily turn off the fluid system, we are instead toggling the vacuum reactors when the batteries are at half the capacity. And with that I think it is time to look on what's the next objective. And the only thing preventing us from entering the next tier is an assembly line. Crafting one requires a lot of materials, but we are good on about everything except for blaze rods and platinum. To get blaze rod we can do an industrial mob farm. Meanwhile, for the platinum, we are currently gathering it as a byproduct. However, a better way is to go visit some new planets where it spawns as a more rich ore. Since it can be found on tier 3 planets and we will soon have to go there anyways, we might as well craft a rocket now and get platinum there. However, after quickly assembling and building the rocket, we find ourselves in a dire spot. We do not have a proper fuel for such an advanced rocket. We will have to synthesize hydrazine in a chemical plant. But that's going to be the story of the next episodes.